Chapter 4500. Yes, Senior. Gong Shu Yiming hurriedly answered, standing there. We are Dongfang Yushan, Shimin Hinyue, Nangong Pingping, and Baiming Chihan. Greetings, Master of Stars and Moon. The four extraordinarily dignified 7th grade Elemental Force Grandmasters cupped their fists in greeting. Greetings, Immortals. Fairy Xingyu did not find it strange and said with a smile, the last time I explored the Star Moon Palace, the four aristocratic families did not send the four fellow immortals. I presume that the four fellow immortals have already obtained opportunities in the Star Moon Palace and become literary sages? Dongfang Yushan smiled. You're right. The patriarchs of the four aristocratic families also sent us to greet you. Thank you for providing us with information. If you need our help in the future, please feel free to ask. When it comes to cooperation, both sides will benefit, but if we don't, both sides will suffer. Fairy Xingyu nodded slightly. Please go back and report to the patriarchs of the four aristocratic families that Zhai Xinglu is Xingyu's Zhai Xinglu and Moon Embracing Palace is Xingyu's Moon Embracing Palace. If they leave Xingyu, they will no longer be Zhai Xinglu and Moon Embracing Palace. The four Confucian cultivators looked at each other. Although they did not quite understand the meaning of these words, they somewhat understood in their hearts. They hurriedly nodded and said, We understand. After we reach the Star Moon Palace, we will definitely pass on these words to the patriarch. Good. Fairy Xingyu flicked her sleeves and said, The signs of the Star Moon Palace's appearance have already appeared. It won't be long before the Star Moon Palace appears. As usual, I will go in first, followed by the four aristocratic families. Thank you, Fairy. Dongfang Yushan looked at everyone and said, We will take our leave first. See you in the Star Moon Palace. Fairy Xingyu responded and turned to fly to the resting place of the Zhai Xinglu disciples. Dongfang Yushan flew back with Baiming Chihan and the others. Nangong Pingping smiled and said in a low voice, Brothers, this Master of Stars and Moon seems very arrogant. She doesn't seem to take us seriously. Brother Nangong seems to be interested in this woman? Baiming Chihan looked at Nangong Pingping with interest and smiled. I'm interested. Nangong Pingping did not hide his intentions and replied, It's a pity that before I left, the patriarch reminded me again and again that I must not disrespect the Master of Stars and Moons. I have the heart but not the strength. As long as you have the heart, you have the intention. Shimin Hingyue said with a smile, This huge star moon really makes all the forces in the world envious. If you can deal with the Star Moon Lord, doesn't Xingyue belong to the Nangong family? Nangong Pingping hurriedly waved his hand and said, I only have the intention. The one with the power is Brother Dongfang. As long as he lifts a finger, Xingyue, shu. Dongfang Yushan hurriedly stopped Nangong Pingping when he saw that Nangong Pingping's words were getting more and more unbearable. Brothers, just say what you want, don't be too frivolous. How could someone who could establish Star Moon be an ordinary person? The patriarch has already told us to be careful, so why should we look for trouble? I don't know about other cultivators, but senior brother Heng Si, who entered the Star Moon Palace last time, clearly said that the Master of Stars and Moons is a mutant. If you want to obtain an opportunity in the Star Moon Palace and come back alive, don't provoke the Master of Stars and Moons. Nangong Pingping shrunk his neck and said with a smile, I'm just saying. The disciples of the four great families flew back to the flying boat as they spoke. Beside the Chitty River, Xiaohua looked at the sparkling water and the moonlight and transmitted his voice. Senior, Su Ji did not understand why Xiaohua transmitted his voice and replied, What's the matter? Although Xiaohua was about to speak, he hesitated for a moment when the words reached his mouth. Just say it. Su Ji said, As long as it doesn't involve the secrets of the immortal world, I can answer you. Senior, in your hometown, before you ascended, did you have a dual cultivation partner? Xiaohua gritted his teeth and asked. You can't invade my privacy. Su Ji refused without hesitation. All right, Xiaohua said helplessly, actually, Junior thinks that Fairy Xingyue is pretty good. She also has some feelings for Senior. Junior doesn't know if Senior can see it, but as an outsider, Junior can see it clearly. Junior missed a lot of good times before. I don't want Senior to have regrets in the future. Junior thinks that even if there is a gap between two celestial venerables in the immortal world, the matter between you two is a private matter and has nothing to do with the Palace of Punishment and the Palace of Justice. I know. Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Su Ji replied in an unusually calm tone. As the saying goes, time breeds love. In the 3 continents, only Xingyue and I have something to talk about. The two of us have been together for so long, how can I not know her thoughts? Then, Senior's heart also has a knot in it? Xiaohua somewhat understood and asked tentatively. That's right. Su Ji nodded. Could it be that you don't have a knot in your heart? Shui didn't leave a mark in your heart? Forget it, Senior. Xiaohua raised his hands and surrendered. Just pretend that Junior didn't say anything. It's good that you understand. Su Ji looked at the surging river and whispered, everyone has their own experiences, everyone has their own choices, and everyone has their own consequences to face. I am a punishment envoy, so I naturally know more than you. In terms of feelings, when I was cultivating in my hometown, I could be considered romantic and elegant. But when you walk through flowers, you will always step on the petals and may even be injured by the thorns. When you turn around, other than the fragrance of the flowers on your clothes, how much beauty can you retain? Time flies, the autumn wind urges people, when the snowflakes flutter, even the branches of the flowers will wither. Hee, that's true. Xiaohua said with a smile, Senior's appearance is much more handsome than Junior's, and you have also learned a lot in this aspect. Junior just wanted to remind Senior. Roar. Xiaohua wanted to say something more, but somewhere in the Chitty River, a loud roar suddenly sounded, and beams of starlight and moonlight fell. It was actually a few great demons fighting. Sometimes I envy these demons. Su Ji looked and said with some emotion, if they want to fight, they fight, and if they want to scold, they have no scruples. Their cultivation is also unique. They don't care about Dao heart, Dao realm, nor are they afraid of inner demons. They only need to temper their demon bodies. Those are all demons with inheritances. Xiaohua said with a smile. There are also the vast majority of demons who don't know how to cultivate. They also learn from our Dao sex human race, wanting to condense a demon core in their body. Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish, Su Ji said, you are wrong. This world doesn't have a completely orthodox cultivation method. In the Demon League, there are also those who cultivate demon cores. Xiaohua was a bit dumbfounded. He was proficient in demon cultivation. That heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix was his clone. How is that possible? Nothing is impossible. Su Ji glanced at Xiaohua, somewhat surprised by his shock, and replied, the reason why the Demon League is called the Demon League is because it is made up of extremely suitable demon territories, and different demon territories have different cultivation methods. Either condense the body, condense the core or Dharma body, or devour the demon soul and condense the soul body. Of course, there are many other methods even I don't know. Alas, it's a mess. Xiaohua sighed. Junior only thought that Junior knew the truth, but when the truth was revealed, Junior knew. The truth is not the truth, the illusion is also the truth. You are right. Su Ji nodded. What I said may not be right. After all, the Demon League is only the Demon League. What about above the immortal world? Above the Demon League? Xiaohua suddenly asked. Senior, what is the purpose of cultivation? Su Ji smiled. It's a secret. Xiaohua shrugged and said in a low voice, all right, just pretend that Junior didn't ask anything. The truth of the matter is the truth of the world. It is also like water flowing when the channel is right. If it is not the time for you to know, then you don't have to know. And when it is time for you to know, the truth will float in front of your eyes without waiting for you to find it. Su Ji said, I have been a punishment envoy for so many years, I have also experienced many things. From these things, I have obtained 4 words. Let nature take its course. Xiaohua's words hit the nail on the head. Yes, that's right. Su Ji nodded, not sounding surprised. You have a very easygoing temper. It is easy for you to let nature take its course. This is also Junior's shortcoming. You can say that I am an unambitious person. I like to live a comfortable life that is not as good as the best, but better than the worst. This is already the best life. Su Ji sighed. Why is the fight getting fiercer? As they spoke, another 100 great demons joined the battle. The battle was getting bigger and bigger. Xiao Hua asked worriedly, don't we need to shout for them to stop? Don't worry about them. Su Ji glanced casually and said, the demon clan has always been like this. Before the Xingyue Palace appears, the power of the starlight will become violent. This will incur the wrath of some great demons with unstable foundations, and it will be easy for fights to break out. When their eyes turn red from fighting, that is when the Xingyue Palace appears. Hearing this, Xiao Hua hurriedly turned to look at Zhai Xinglu's spaceship. Indeed, Fairy Xingyue had already given the order from Zhai Xinglu, and a group of Zhai Xinglu's disciples began to prepare for departure. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at Chitty River. The space that had been disturbed by the fluctuations earlier had sped up again. Layer upon layer of silver tadpole-like light spots had already covered nearly 10,000 miles of the river surface. Under the silver light, the previously orange river surface gave off a crimson glow, looking very strange. Xiao Hua muttered in his heart, the Xingyue Palace is finally going to appear. This famous Xingyue Palace. What will it look like? Thinking of the Xingyue Palace, Xiao Hua unconsciously thought of the illusory array in the ruins when he fought with the unrestrained heavenly demon. A shuddering feeling quietly emerged from the bottom of his heart. Or rather, a shadow gradually shrouded his heart. Could it be a trap? Xiao Hua couldn't help but look at Su Ji. Su Ji didn't pay attention to anything else, but instead focused his attention on the sky above the Chitty River. His face was slightly nervous. Xiao Hua was slightly relieved. It shouldn't be. This is not the first time we have entered the Xingyue Palace. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue have already explored the passageway a few times and returned safely. Chapter 4501. Another hour passed. Suddenly, the crescent moon that was hanging in the sky for half a day suddenly streaked across the vast sky and nailed itself in the middle of the night sky. Furthermore, the crescent moon from before suddenly expanded, revealing other parts of the shadow. A full moon was swollen and scattered moonlight. The night sky that was originally filled with brilliant stars was now filled with no stars at all. This moonlight was so bright that tens of thousands of miles around the Chitty River were as bright as day. In just a moment, the full moon seemed to shatter, turning into tens of thousands of fragments. Even the moonlight that filled the sky was also divided. Pillars of light appeared in the night sky, and at this time, the night sky seemed to be unable to cover the Chitty River, turning into darkness that was mixed in between the pillars of light. Boom! A muffled sound rang out. Although it came from the horizon, it also shook the hearts of all the humans and demons. The entire world shook under this roar. Like a watermelon being opened, the stars in the night sky were like melon seeds inside the melon, flashing with a black brilliance. It was clearly a black brilliance, but in the dark night, it was clearly seen by people. However, when Xiao Hua's eyes turned, the black turned into a red color. After the red color, the 6 colors of orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple flashed clearly. In the end, every starlight turned into a halo, revealing a translucent milky white starlight. Wang wang wang. On the Chitty River, the space within tens of thousands of miles was shaking. The river water that previously seemed to be tightly pressed down by a large hand was now slowly being split. In just a few breaths, the seemingly endless and bottomless Chitty River was actually split into 2 halves. The severed river water was not like an ordinary river water, forming waves, but was still as calm as before. Swish, swish, swish. At the same time the Chitty River was cut off, the moonlight that had previously splashed across the Thousand Demons' sacred realm also began to gather, falling within a radius of 1,000,000 miles around the Chitty River. The mottled light and shadow looked like a layer of a giant tree's crown blocking the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. As the light and shadow fell, a thick shadow gradually appeared. An indescribable majesty, heaviness, fear, and suppression seeped out from this shadow. With the appearance of this black shadow, countless chaotic fluctuations rushed out in all directions. Space began to be disturbed, and the heaven and earth origin energy, as well as the aura of righteousness, turned into chaos. An apocalyptic pressure descended upon the Crimson River. Primordial world? As soon as Xiaohua came in contact with this fluctuation and aura, his expression immediately changed. He was simply too familiar with this aura. The ruins were still fine, as the aura of the human clan had rushed out of the desolation aura. However, the incomplete desolation continent was filled with this kind of desolation aura. However, on the incomplete eldritch continent, the aura of the eldritch continent was not complete, or rather, it was as ordinary as grass. It did not have the domineering and ferocious aura of the Star Moon Palace before him. Boom, boom, boom. In the middle of the moon, the silhouette of the Star Moon Palace was revealed. Following that, countless pillars of stars shot down. Just like the moonlight, the starlight that had previously covered the entire Thousand Demons' sacred realm was now all projected onto the outline of the Star Moon Palace. Pillars of starlight transcended time and space and landed on the Chitty River. The pillars of starlight were first twisted into knots before rushing into the outline of the Star Moon Palace. In just a few breaths' time, a huge object whose entire outline could not be seen clearly appeared above the Chitty River. This huge object was completely condensed from the brilliance of the moon and stars. Countless huge spots of light swam wantonly within it. Every time it moved, a majestic desolation aura would rush into the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Wherever this desolation aura passed, hundreds of miles of space would be penetrated, forming a chaotic layer that isolated the Star Moon Palace from the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Senior, is this the Star Moon Palace? Seeing that the Star Moon Palace had appeared, but it was not what he had imagined at all, Xiaohua could not help but ask, "Why? Can't I see the palace door? I can't see the palace either?" Su Ji replied indifferently, "Who told you that the Star Moon Palace must be a palace? Who told you that something named by Fairy Xing you must have a plaque of the Star Moon Palace?" "Sigh, I understand now." Xiaohua sighed. This Star Moon Palace might not be a palace at all. It might not be. However, it's most likely still a palace. Su Ji replied. "When we first entered, the Star Moon Palace already looked like a palace. Otherwise, why would Fairy Xingyu name this object the Star Moon Palace? Moreover, there are also halls inside the Star Moon Palace. What about the palace door?" Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "Without the palace door, how do we enter? Don't be anxious, don't be anxious." Su Ji said unhurriedly. "The entrance will appear eventually. It's just a matter of time." That's true. Why should I be anxious?" Xiaohua nodded. "Indeed," Su Ji replied casually. "You're not anxious, but the eunuch is." "What?" Xiaohua was stunned. He did not quite understand. "It's nothing." Su Ji was slightly taken aback. He then explained, "This is a saying from my hometown." "Oh." Seeing that Su Ji did not explain further, Xiaohua responded and released his divine thought. However, when his divine thought touched the chaotic layer of space, it was immediately shattered by the space. He could not pass through it at all. At the edge of the space, the desolation aura was abnormally dense. This Star Moon Palace really looks like an ancient relic. At this point, Xiaohua no longer had any doubts about the origins of the Star Moon Palace. This was because he could clearly see with his naked eye that this Star Moon Palace was somewhat similar to Panga's axe. What the Star Moon Palace had revealed earlier was not a real palace, but an illusory silhouette. Only after the pillar of light from the stars and moon had fallen did it solidify into a real body. Seeing this, Xiaohua had some understanding. Wasn't Panga's axe the same? On the Desolation continent, Panga's axe was just an illusory silhouette. Only in the 3 continents would Panga's axe become a real body. Of course, the Star Moon Palace was on the other side of a chaotic layer of space. If this layer of space disappeared, the complete Star Moon Palace would definitely be revealed. Xiaohua and Su Ji were fully focused on observing the Star Moon Palace. The other forces were also rubbing their palms together. The disciples of Zhai Xinglu had already flown behind Xiao Hua and Su Ji, lining up in the formation they had rehearsed earlier, waiting for the right time. In the distance, the disciples of the four great clans were also waiting in formation, waiting for the Star Moon Palace to make a move. Behind the four great clans and the Star Moon Palace, the 100 schools of thought, which were Confucian cultivators, were also eyeing covetously. The Star Moon Palace was huge. In other places, some Taoist cultivators, some Buddhist protectors, and most of the great demons of the demon clan released their remarkable abilities, waiting for the Star Moon Palace to open. Fairy Xingyu flew to Su Ji's side and said softly, "So far, I haven't seen anything unusual." "No." Su Ji shook his head. "The power of the stars and moon this time is too strong. The spatial barrier around the Star Moon Palace is also too thick. I'm afraid it won't be easy to pass through." Isn't it that 7 stars great sage from the Great Sage Hall? Fairy Xingyu gritted her teeth in hatred. He didn't become a sage earlier or later, but he actually became a sage at this juncture. Moreover, not only did he trigger the 7 stars transit, but he also triggered the 10,000 stars transit after entering the Great Sage Hall. Of course, this greatly increased the strength of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm, but it also triggered too much of the power of the stars and moon in the 3 continents. Su Ji did not complain like Fairy Xingyu. Instead, he said softly, "We can pass through this spatial barrier easily, but the disciples of Zhai Xinglu and those cultivators who are sensitive to the power of the stars and moon will be in trouble." "What are you afraid of?" Fairy Xingyu pursed her lips and smiled. She looked as if she had a card up her sleeve. She said, "If it was the last time, we would naturally have to worry and waste our dermic powers. But this time, we don't have to worry at all." Although Fairy Xingyu did not look at Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Before Su Ji could speak, he said, "Seniors, you don't have to worry about this. Leave it to me. I'll keep them in the Kunlun mirror first and release them after they enter." "There's another problem," Fairy Xingyu said worriedly. "I'm afraid that we won't be able to find a pavilion in the Star Moon Palace where we can use storage bags. That'll be troublesome." "Ah." Xiao Hua was stunned and asked curiously, "Senior, do you mean there's no way to use imperial weapons or magic treasures like the Heaven and Earth bracelet in the Star Moon Palace?" "Of course." Fairy Xingyu smiled bitterly. "I don't know why the Star Moon Palace is so strange. Even among the immortals. Sigh, it seems that there are very few such restrictions. Let's keep these cultivators in the Kunlun mirror first." Su Ji ordered without hesitation. "Although the Starry Sky maze is difficult, we have a 20% chance of success. Including them, it's only 40%. Now that Xiao Hua is with us, even if he has a 10% chance, it's still 30%. It's best if these cultivators can come out. If they can't, then they can't." "Okay." Xiao Hua nodded and said to Fairy Xingyu, "Fairy, come with me and let those disciples of Zhai Xinglu enter my Kunlun mirror." "But," Fairy Xingyue responded and was about to turn around and fly back. Woo! A gust of wind suddenly whistled. In the distance, where the demon clan had gathered, a great demon that was at least 10,000 feet in size suddenly flapped its wings and pounced toward Xingyue Palace, wanting to take the lead. "Damn it!" Fairy Xingyu paused and raised her right hand. A halo of stars appeared on her right index finger. However, Fairy Xingyu was still a little too slow. Just as she was about to point it out, the great demon had already rushed into the chaotic space. Swoosh! The great demon's body landed. Dazzling starlight shone from the great demon's body as it rushed into the space. The great demon's body instantly expanded by more than 30%. In just a few breaths, the great demon's body had completely disappeared into the space. At this moment, wherever the great demon's body passed, starlight shone and traces of its flight were clearly visible. What puzzled Xiao Hua and the others was that although the great demon seemed to be approaching the Star Moon Palace in an arc, what was revealed in the chaotic interlayer space was actually a complicated bow knot. Chapter 4502. When the great demon flew into the middle of the chaotic mezzanine, the light from his body was suddenly extinguished. His body, which had expanded previously, rapidly shrank at the same time and returned to its original size in the blink of an eye. Not only that, but in the next few breaths, the great demon's body continued to shrink until it was only 30% of its original size. Humph, you're courting death. Fairy Xingyu's expression was cautious at first, but when she saw the great demon's body shrink, a sneer appeared on her face. She said to Xiaohua, "Let's go. There's no need to look anymore. The door to the Star Moon Palace has not been opened yet. If you go in now, you'll only die." Xiaohua nodded and retreated steadily. His gaze was still fixed on the great demon. Sure enough, Xiaohua had only flown a few dozen feet when the great demon's body and mind suddenly swayed in the spatial mezzanine. Like a kite that had lost its string, it kept tumbling in the wind. Every time it tumbled, the great demon's body shrank. When it had shrunk to the size of a few dozen feet, it turned into a shadow and fell into the Chitty River. Unfortunately, there were no waves on the Chitty River. Who knew what kind of spatial crevice this reckless great demon had fallen into? You want to enter the Star Moon Palace before my Zhai Xinglu? What a joke! Fairy Xingyu said hatefully. If the Star Moon Palace was so easy to enter, would the 4 aristocratic families let my Zhai Xinglu enter first? Xiaohua smiled faintly and did not agree. He was still wondering why the spatial mezzanine was so strange. Fairy Xingyu ordered, and the disciples of Zhai Xinglu obeyed. Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and activated his dermic powers to send the disciples into the Kunlun wonderland. Gongshu Isin, Gongshu Yiming, and Emo Jianli naturally followed him in. However, they were in the Shenhua continent. Zhai Xinglu was now the center of attention. Everything that Xiaohua did fell into everyone's eyes. Seeing the disciples of Zhai Xinglu disappear, the disciples of the 4 aristocratic families smiled thought-provoking. While Xiaohua was casting his technique, Su Ji transmitted his voice over from afar. Fairy Xingyu did not disturb Xiaohua and flew over. At that moment, the thick and massive silhouette of the Star Moon Palace began to move. The light of the stars and the moon that had previously condensed into the silhouette of the Star Moon Palace flowed like stars. High up in the sky, the light of the stars and the moon continued to fall, colliding with the flowing brilliance of the Xingyue Palace. A scene that was more dazzling than all the fireworks in the world was presented before everyone. The light fell into the chaotic interlayer in the middle, refracting layers of magnificent illusions. These illusions were like a fairyland, like the traces of a devil. Traces of unfathomable fluctuations were also emitted. However, these light shadows were all within the mezzanine, and none of them fell on the edge of the mezzanine. Damn it, damn it, damn it! Fairy Xingyu cursed angrily and flew toward the Chitty River. Su Ji looked at Xiaohua and slowed down a little. Xiaohua asked in a low voice, "Senior, what did it look like in the past?" In the past, the shadows of these palace doors came out from the spatial mezzanine. There were tens of thousands of shadows in the space. Su Ji explained in a low voice, "We only needed to rely on our celestial artifacts to find the correct shadows and the correct route. Now that the shadows of the palace door can't be seen, Senior's celestial artifacts can't work, right?" Xiaohua asked. "Yes, that's right." Su Ji nodded and explained, "As you can see, the waves that are emitted from the Star Moon Palace are left behind from the ancient times when the Star Moon Palace was being refined. It is different from the waves of Yuan Qi of the heaven and earth and the waves of the formation. When these fluctuations fall into the space of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, they will collapse the nearby space, forming a kind of mezzanine. Within this mezzanine, there is a kind of disorderly chaos. There is no heaven-earth essence Qi, no righteous Qi, and only a little light from the stars and the moon. You saw it just now. When a 7th grade essence Qi great demon falls into this space, it becomes an ordinary demonic beast. Not to mention our celestial artifacts, even immortal artifacts can't be activated here. In other words, the 2 seniors can't be sure which of these countless shadows of the palace door is the real one." Xiaohua frowned and immediately thought of the situation when he was searching for the entrance to the mysterious water palace on the Saint River. The entrance to the mysterious water palace was formed by the light shadows through a vortex. It looked different from the entrance to the Star Moon Palace, but in fact, they were similar. However, the palace door of the Star Moon Palace was more complicated and harder to find. These shadows of the palace door are all fake. Su Ji's expression did not change as he explained faintly, only the door that appeared on the Star Moon Palace is the real one. What we are really looking for is the fluctuation that rushed out of the door. This fluctuation repels the disorderly chaos around it, forming a temporary passage. In this mezzanine space, only this passage is safe. Seniors, why didn't you tell me earlier? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Otherwise, I could have thought of other ways, Fairy Xingyu said helplessly, because we have a probing celestial artifact. The previous few times, this space mezzanine was not a problem at all. I didn't expect that we can't even step into the Star Moon Palace's door this time. Chapter 4503. Even if I can help you, I'm afraid we don't have enough time. Su Ji's face also showed disappointment as he replied bitterly, it will take too long for your star shuttle to rush into the spatial mezzanine. I'm afraid we won't be able to find the real palace door. The palace door of the Star Moon Palace has already closed. What? Xiaohua was shocked again. How long will the palace door of the Star Moon Palace last? Why didn't you say so earlier? Su Ji did not explain to him. He only said, 2 hours at most, half an hour at least. Oh, there's still time. Xiaohua nodded and asked again, if this junior can find the general area, senior will be able to activate the star shuttle, right? You can determine the general area? Fairy Xingyu was overjoyed. This junior will try. Xiaohua nodded. However, this junior can't guarantee it. Xiaohua, you are indeed our savior. Fairy Xingyu shouted, Su Ji, your divination technique is really accurate. Seniors, get ready. Xiaohua said in a low voice as he looked around. On the entire Crimson Ground River, tens of thousands of humans and demons were watching the three of them perform a one-man show. By the way, Senior, you can also ask the 4 great families and the great demons to think of a way. We can't always be the vanguard. Xiaohua thought of a way to distract them and whispered to Fairy Xingyu. Fairy Xingyu nodded and said, yes, they used to follow Zhai Xinglu and drink soup. Now let them do something. After saying that, Fairy Xingyu flew up into the sky and sent a voice transmission to the 4 great families, the Confucian cultivators, and the great demons of the demon clan. Xiaohua nodded at Su Ji and the 2 of them flew closer to the spatial mezzanine. Su Ji waved his hand and the exploded star shuttle was restored. The dim starlight fell into his hand. Xiaohua stopped and turned his head to look. Under Fairy Xingyu's voice transmission, the 4 great families and the Confucian cultivators were also a little flustered. They gathered together to discuss, while the great demons of the demon clan rushed into the mezzanine one after another. They each found a direction and activated their innate divine abilities, trying to find the real palace door. Senior, Xiaohua whispered, please protect this junior. I don't want others to see my divine abilities. All right. Without another word, Su Ji raised his arms high into the sky and spread his 5 fingers. Like a peacock spreading its tail, lightning immediately enveloped the surrounding hundreds of miles. Inside the thunder, Xiaohua slapped his forehead. A ghostly green light flashed and the delusion breaker eyes slowly opened. Hiss! Xiaohua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when he saw everything through the illusion breaker eye. In front of Xiaohua's eyes was an incomparably huge golden color. This golden color made Xiaohua's delirium transcendence eye sour. Within the golden light, an irregular orange hole that looked like a hole was slowly moving. The orange hole radiated a tricolored flow. This flow was like a spring rushing into a grayish-black flowing wave. The flowing wave was shaking violently. Clusters of green and silver flashed constantly. The tricolored flow created a faintly discernible passageway in the flowing wave, and then dissipated within the flowing wave. Over there, Xiaohua whispered to Su Ji. However, the illusory image of the palace door is changing from time to time. All right, Su Ji's face was still calm as he replied via voice transmission, as long as you can roughly determine the range. After saying that, Su Ji turned around and sent a voice transmission to Fairy Xingyu. Fairy Xingyu was currently saying something to the Shimin family. She did not expect Xiao Hua to be able to determine the location in such a short period of time. Therefore, without another word, she immediately teleported to Xiao Hua's side. Fairy Xingyu's actions naturally attracted the attention of the four great families. While they were discussing, they were also watching the movements of Xiao Hua and the others. Su Ji sent a voice transmission to Fairy Xingyu. The two of them exchanged opinions and then led Xiao Hua to the location of the illusory image of the palace door. At this moment, some great demons of the demon clan had already begun to force their way into the spatial mezzanine. There were also some Confucian families and heavenly kings of the Buddhist sect who had made preparations. They activated their imperial equipment or heavenly eyes to explore the spatial mezzanine. They saw the illusory image of the palace door. At this time, because the Star Moon Palace had moved again, there were already more than 10,000 illusory images of the palace door within 100 miles. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, "Senior Su, please continue to protect me. I will activate my divine ability first. After I have some clues, can you activate your magic treasure?" "No need." Su Ji shook his head and said, "Save your magic power first. There are still places in the Star Moon Palace that need your help. Here, according to our previous discussion, Fairy Xingyu and I will take action." Yes, Su Ji is right. Fairy Xingyu also nodded and said, "There are many places that rely on the power of thunder. It's better for you to save your strength." With that, Fairy Xingyu nodded at Su Ji and said, "You go first. I will activate it later. Let's find the right palace door first." Xiao Hua hurriedly sent a voice transmission, "Fairy, just follow the direction I know. There's no need to search anymore." What? This time, even Su Ji was shocked. Your divine ability can actually see through the space that is close to chaos? It seems like it." Xiao Hua nodded. "Senior." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "The palace door shadow is just a facade." When Su Ji heard this, he could not help but laugh. Then he held his forehead and said, "I have fallen into a habitual mindset." Habitual mindset? Xiao Hua did not understand what Su Ji meant. However, before he could ask further, Su Ji turned his head and said, "Xingyu, follow behind me." "Xiao Hua, you stay at the back and protect me." "Yes, senior." Xiao Hua nodded. Su Ji stood up, and layers of strange markings appeared on his body. These markings rushed into the air and turned into tadpole-like runes, and when the runes flashed, a layer of dragon-scale-like armor appeared around Su Ji's body. There were many lightning runes on this armor, and an indescribable aura was emitted from the armor. Looking at Fairy Xingyu, the marks also fell off her body and arms. A layer of soft armor that was engraved with many mysterious runes was also revealed. This soft armor was covered in starlight. Whoosh! Su Ji's body swayed and a thunderbolt crashed into the star mark. He chased after the moon beast. Fairy Xingyu turned her head and looked at Xiao Hua. She was a little surprised that Xiao Hua did not take out any Dharma treasure or armor to protect himself. However, she did not have time to say more. She only nodded and signaled Xiao Hua to be careful. Then she turned into a ray of starlight and chased after him. The two immortals flew into the passageway and immediately emitted strange lights and shadows. The lights and shadows seemed to be extremely long and wide at the same time. An aura was emitted from the passageway like a tidal wave. Xiao Hua took a deep breath and activated the vital energy in his body. Buzz buzz. Countless sword hairs appeared on the surface of his body. When he turned into a sword, Xiao Hua also flashed and rushed into the passageway. Quick! The actions of the three naturally attracted the attention of the Confucian cultivators from the four aristocratic families. Dongfang Yushan waved his hand without hesitation and said, "According to the agreement with Zhai Xinglu, let's go in." "Yes." The disciples of the Dongfang family responded happily. They formed a group and flew toward the Chidi River. The starry sky passageway, which was dozens of feet wide, became bigger and expanded in all directions. Before the disciples of the Dongfang family arrived, the Buddhist sex guardians, who had been paying attention to Xiaohua and the others, had already arrived. They also activated their bodies without hesitation and entered the passageway. The left eye of the cultivator seemed to have no pupils and was only pure white. The right eye of the cultivator was completely filled with pupils and was only pure black. The cultivator's eyes were expressionless in the blink of an eye. However, when the cultivator flew past the chaotic storm, he looked at the light in the distance and said in the voice of the Grand Mist Ancestor, "This Taoist cultivator is indeed Xiaohua. When did he become so powerful? He's a human Mahayana realm cultivator. Back then, this old man's cultivation was only at this level. How could he have cultivated to such a level in just a few hundred years? If he had such a cultivation level, how could he be suppressed in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm? Right now, all the Confucian cultivators in the 100 schools of philosophers are talking about the profound yellow board, the Fortune Gate disciples, and the Grand Ascension stage human who streaked across the sky like a meteor. But who can tell me where he came from?" The Grand Mist Ancestor was almost muttering to himself, "Based on the clues we have now, he was the first to appear when I escaped. However, at that time, he was at the eye of the West Sea. Later, he appeared in the Yu Province's Longevity Town. If I'm not mistaken, he must have arrived at the Longevity Town through the eye of the West Sea. Damn it, this bastard's luck is too good. There are so many spatial veins, and only a few people can come out alive. He just happened to be able to enter one of them. Sigh, if I had known that this Xiaohua was so mysterious, I would have brought him out back then." The Grand Mist Ancestor was already regretting his decision. If I had subdued him back then, wouldn't he be my powerful right-hand man now? But now, I've already offended him, and this enmity is not easy to mend. After that, I even let Taoist Master Ching Su and Master Heaven Flipping covet his forces in the soaring Dragon Mountain range. I don't even know if he's discovered it now. Of course, it was only for an instant, and the Grand Mist Ancestor said coldly, "Humph, so what if we fall out? Right now, the 3 continents are in turmoil, and heroes are emerging in large numbers. There are as many heroes as there are hairs on an ox in this chaotic world, but there is only one true emperor. With the Yin Yang Illustrated Handbook, it's only a matter of time before I recover to the peak of the Grand Ascension stage. Let me ask you, who in this world can be my opponent? Xiaohua is nothing more than a helper sent by the heavens to assist this old man in achieving hegemony. If he is tamed, then this old man doesn't mind giving him some benefits. If he is unruly, then this old man also doesn't mind personally eliminating him. The so-called Fortune Gate is merely a gift given to this old man by the heavens." Chapter 4506. Haha. The Grand Mist Ancestor couldn't help but laugh at the thought of this. Black and white clouds rose around him and wrapped around his body as he charged toward the end of the starlight. However, the black-white cloud merely flew a few zhang away. Swoosh! Another chaos storm came crashing down. The Grand Mist Ancestor was so pleased with himself that a corner of the black-white cloud was swept away by the chaos storm. The black-white cloud was like a bubble in the chaos storm, and it was blown away in an instant. The Grand Mist Ancestor's figure was revealed, but one of his legs was missing. Damn it! The Grand Mist Ancestor hurriedly retreated. His pair of black and white eyes stared ahead as he felt a little vexed. Why do I feel so impatient? It's better to be careful. Xiaohua is a human Grand Ascension stage cultivator, so there's nothing to fear. However, the Star Moon Lord is a mysterious figure who can't be underestimated. Moreover, who is that cultivator beside the Star Moon Lord? It seems that even Xiaohua has to treat him with respect. Could he be a Grand Ascension stage cultivator as well? That's impossible. How could there be so many Grand Ascension stage cultivators in my absence? See, could it be him? Thinking of this, the Grand Mist Ancestor hurriedly withdrew the black and white fog, revealing his body. His previous arrogance disappeared without a trace, and his black and white eyes revealed a strange expression as he stared at the distant starlight. He pondered, how could I forget about him? However, with his lifespan and strength, it's impossible for him to undergo tribulation. He should have died tens of thousands of years ago. Of course, I can't rule out the possibility that he had some fortuitous encounter that allowed him to preserve his primordial spirit and become undying like me. If it's him, I have to be careful. His abilities are strange and he has countless tricks up his sleeves. I owe him a debt of gratitude for his guidance. Perhaps I should treat him with respect. What respect? If it's really him, then this old man should ask him why he didn't save this old man when he was clearly alive and saw this old man being suppressed in the eye of the West Sea. Why didn't he save me when he knew that I was being suppressed by the combined forces of the immortals, Buddhas, and demons? As a senior of the Tao Gate, he doesn't have the slightest awareness of a senior. He doesn't even care about the Tao Gate's disciples. What right does he have to be a senior of the Tao Gate? If this old man sees him, I'm going to question him in person. The more the Grand Mist Ancestor thought about it, the angrier he got. He had long forgotten about the him who had taught him, and the righteousness of reviving Taoism was on his lips. However, even if that was what the Grand Mist Ancestor thought, he didn't dare to question Su Ji. If Su Ji was really him, the Grand Mist Ancestor understood that Su Ji's divine ability could be withstood by those around him. The Grand Mist Ancestor wouldn't dare to appear in front of Su Ji. Therefore, even though the Grand Mist Ancestor had sensed the Dongfang family's disciples chasing after him, he did not dare to rush towards the Star Moon Palace. Even Su Ji and the others didn't dare to underestimate the power of the Chaos Storm. Even the Grand Mist Ancestor wasn't spared, not to mention the other cultivators. Most of the disciples of the four great clans who had rushed in first were caught off guard when they saw the chaotic windstorm falling. The lucky ones naturally saw the windstorm brushing past them and broke out in a cold sweat. The unlucky ones could only watch as the windstorm fell. Not to mention their physical bodies being destroyed and their bones turning into powder, even the subbodies that had been brewing for a long time were destroyed by the windstorm. They first turned into vital energy, then merged with the chaotic aura and turned into nothingness. Naturally, there were some Confucian cultivators who weren't willing to die. Most of them had imperial weapons in their hands or on them. Their tone wasn't inferior to the Immortal Palace's imperial weapons. However, as the chaos storm brushed past, any imperial weapon lost its luster and any material turned into scrap metal. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, 20% of the disciples of the four great families had already fallen. Change formation and advance. Dongfang Yushan saw that the situation in the Starlight Passage was more dangerous than he had expected. He didn't dare to delay and hurriedly transmitted his orders. Unfortunately, within the Starlight Passage, his strength of a mere 7th-level origin power martial grandmaster wasn't enough. No one could hear him. Dongfang Yushan had no choice but to shout at the top of his lungs. Fortunately, the Dongfang family's foundation was rare in the hidden immortal continent. The disciples who were selected to enter the Star Moon Palace were mostly elites of the human race. They still had the ability to remain calm in the face of danger. When they heard Dongfang Yushan's orders, they immediately stabilized and hurriedly changed their formation. In a scattered star formation, they advanced inwards. If the Dongfang family could do this, the Shimin family, Nangong family, and Baiming family could do the same. The four great families occupied the entire Starlight Passage and rushed towards the Star Moon Palace. Compared to the four great families, the Confucian cultivators of the 100 schools of philosophers were slightly inferior. However, the human race was strong in unity and order. Although nearly 30% of the disciples had fallen in the chaos storm, they still stubbornly advanced towards the Star Moon Palace. Compared to the human race, the great demons of the demon race were far inferior. They also had some allies, but not many. When they saw the door of the Star Moon Palace appear and the human race begin to enter in an orderly manner, they became anxious and swarmed towards the door. The more impatient ones had already bypassed the human cultivators and subconsciously flew in among them. The more meticulous ones waited for the human race to finish entering before finding some great demons to enter with them. Of course, this disorder had its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that the chaos storm fell. Due to the disorder of the great demons, They were scattered all over the passage, and the chances of being hit by the chaos storm were not very high. However, it was also this disorder that slowed down the speed of entering the passage. Not long after, the Star Moon Palace moved again and the chaos storm fell again. There were no surprises at all. Under the aura of chaos, the great demons of the demon race first emitted dazzling starlight and their bodies rapidly expanded. Then, without waiting for their bodies to come into contact with the starlight passage, boom! Every bit of flesh and blood in the great demons' bodies exploded. This exploded flesh and blood separated from the starlight and immediately turned into nothingness. Go, go, go! The great demons of the demon race were all terrified. They scrambled to fly towards the Star Moon Palace with all their might. It was inevitable that the passage would be somewhat chaotic. However, it was fortunate that this was not the first time that the Confucian cultivator clans had entered. They were already prepared and gave up part of the space to avoid the great demons. After a full hour, there were no longer any traces of humans or demons on the Crimson Earth River. Although the moon and stars were still bright, and the night wind was blowing, the endless loneliness was still spreading in all directions, even more endlessly than the aura of primordial times. At this moment, the area of 100,000 miles around the Star Moon Palace was filled with endless whirlpools of wind blades. Although the appearance of the Star Moon Palace only triggered the aura of chaos within 1,000 miles, the changes in heaven and earth caused by the Star Moon Palace were not limited to this. Although the wind blades formed small whirlpools, there was a huge whirlpool that surrounded the entire Star Moon Palace. Xiao Hua and the others were inside the whirlpool and could not sense it. However, the demon race inside the whirlpool could sense that even if they released their primordial thoughts could not come within 100,000 miles. Even immortal Emperor Go Chen's supreme heavenly mirror and Mahavarakana revered world's divine ability could not see what was happening within 100,000 miles. Although Xiao Hua did not know that so many things were happening in the passageway behind him, he could guess with his heels. The protruding light pillar began to flow with mysterious fine lines from top to bottom. The fine lines were extremely strange and exuded an unapproachable majesty. When the fine lines fell to the bottom of the light pillar, the entire light pillar swelled toward the passage like a bubble. Puff! The light pillar turned into an aura and rushed out, revealing a starry sky under the brilliance. Chapter 4507. Let's go! Su Ji shouted, obviously reminding Xiao Hua that Fairy Xingyu's figure had already flashed into the starry sky. Entering the Star Moon Palace was not too troublesome. Xiao Hua only felt a strong primitive aura coming from all over the starry sky, making his mouth and nose feel very comfortable. Phew! Standing in the starry sky, Su Ji looked at the huge, convex, starry door behind him and the mottled light and shadow outside the starry door. He let out a long sigh and said, "Entering the Star Moon Palace has never been as difficult as this time." Fairy Xingyu looked at the void under her feet and the picturesque stars and moons around her and said, "Maybe it was too easy before and we didn't gain anything. Today's difficulty is the only way we can find the real passage." "What was it like before?" Xiao Hua asked tentatively. In fact, Xiao Hua had wanted to ask this question for a long time. However, seeing that Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu were unwilling to say more, Xiao Hua understood that although the two immortals trusted him, they were still somewhat guarded against him. After all, they had been taught a lesson before him. Now, they only knew about the primordial chaos ancestor. Who knew what the primordial chaos ancestor was like before? Therefore, Xiao Hua never asked too much about things that they did not want to say because he had a lot of things that he had not told them. It wasn't so complicated in the past. Su Ji replied faintly, "Before we came in, there were many illusory doors. We only needed to find the right one, activate the spirit shuttle, and let the spirit shuttle find the right passage. At that time, there were sometimes chaotic storms in the Starlight Passage, but not many. We were the first to come in and have encountered them more than 10 times. Based on our previous experience, 3 times is enough." Fairy Xingyu looked at the mottled starry door and gloated. This time, the 4 aristocratic families and the Confucian cultivators are unlucky. I'm afraid they will lose 50% of their disciples. In the past, only 10% of the great demons of the demon clan would die. This time, it will probably reach 30%. Su Ji nodded. After all, the chaotic storms have multiplied several times. Although their demon bodies are strong, under the chaotic aura, their demon bodies are like ants. Primordial chaos seems to be here. Fairy Xingyu thought for a while and finally reminded Su Ji. Su Ji's face sank as he nodded. Yes, I've already sensed his aura. Although his strength is not as strong as when he was at his peak, he has already refined the yin-yang illustration mirror and entrusted his primordial spirit to it. His divine powers are even stronger than before. Fairy Xingyu said again. Not bad. Su Ji turned his head to look at the huge stargate and said, after refining the yin-yang illustration book, he has the preliminary ability to reverse yin and yang. Moreover, he also used the power of the yin-yang illustration book to forcibly occupy the body of a Taoist cultivator. If there is no special magic, it is very difficult to recognize him. Unfortunately, a dog can't change its habit of eating shit. Some people would never do something in their lifetime, but some people would do it with a wave of their hand. Some people would rather die than think about something, but some people would take it for granted. Fuck. Fairy Xingyue glared at Su Ji with dissatisfaction and said, Aren't you saying that I'm waiting for myself? That's right. Su Ji nodded solemnly. In this aspect, we can't compare to Xiaohua. Xiaohua was extremely embarrassed. He waved his hand and said, Senior, you think too highly of me. In a life and death situation, I will also take over someone else's body. You won't. Su Ji seemed to be more certain than Xiaohua. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and touched his nose. Senior seems to understand me better than I do. Because a cultivator like you is the darling of the heavenly Tao. How could the heavenly Tao bear to test you with such a cruel choice? Su Ji answered calmly, without any hint of jealousy in his voice. Senior, you're flattering me. Xiaohua disagreed. However, when he saw that Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue were not in a hurry to move forward, as if they were waiting for something, he asked again, By the way, why is the Hong Meng ancestor here? Does he also need to come to the Star Moon Palace to comprehend? I don't know either. Su Ji shook his head. Hong Meng is the most scheming. He came to the Star Moon Palace in his early years and disappeared from our sight. However, after he left the Star Moon Palace, he did not mention a word about what he saw in the Star Moon Palace. I have never interrogated him about this. He must have encountered something in the Star Moon Palace last time. This time he wants to go and take a look. Hee, isn't that just right? Xiaohua chuckled. Let's wait here and stop him first and interrogate him. Moreover, Xiaohua originally wanted to say that he also had a grudge with the Hong Meng ancestor and wanted to ask about it. However, Su Ji shook his head and said, Everyone has their own ambitions. Why force him? Moreover, Hong Meng's ambition is too big. He will burn himself sooner or later. Why should we be nosy? Looking at Fairy Xingyue's pursed lips, Xiaohua nodded inwardly. He gave Su Ji a thumbs up in his heart. Only such a magnanimous cultivator was worthy of being an immortal. Only such a broad-minded immortal was worthy of being a law enforcer. Xiaohua admitted that it was difficult for him to pardon someone who had harmed him. Let's go. Su Ji originally wanted to wait a little longer. However, when he heard Xiaohua mention killing the Hong Meng ancestor, he did not want to wait any longer. He called out and rushed into the starry sky. Let's go. Fairy Xingyue was obviously like Xiaohua. She wanted to make a fool out of the Hong Meng ancestor. However, she was helpless now. She shrugged and said, Let's go through the meteor belt first. However, speaking of which, isn't it a little early to go through the meteor belt? Su Ji did not answer Fairy Xingyue. Fairy Xingyue chased after him resentfully. Xiaohua also looked thoughtfully at the huge stargate and urged his body to follow the two immortals. The inside of the Star Moon Palace was incomparably huge and there were no restrictions that restricted divine sense. Xiaohua tried to release his divine sense, but he could not reach the end of the Star Moon Palace. Moreover, the space of the Star-Moon Palace was very strange. It was different from the three continents, the ruins, and the primitive continent. Xiaohua had already tried, but he could not sense the Shenhua continent. Needless to say, the Kunlun mirror could not be used either. More importantly, Xiaohua vaguely felt that the power of laws that imprisoned him on the three continents had somewhat disappeared. The power of the two immortals flying in front of him had quietly changed. Perhaps they had already broken free from the shackles of the ninth-grade essence force. It's worthy of being an ancient divine object. Xiaohua could not help but sigh. The Star-Moon Palace seems to have formed a world of its own. Even the laws are different. No wonder the space and the Kunlun mirror cannot be used. Only a divine object like this has a passageway to the immortal world. After Xiaohua and the others left, a stream of light flashed above the Stargate. First, a bald head poked in and then looked around. Then, a fat figure squeezed in. This Buddhist sect guardian looked very ordinary, but one of his eyes was black and the other white. The Buddhist sect guardian jumped into the starry sky and his fat body jumped a few times on the spot. He looked around blankly and then muttered to himself, "So, the Star-Moon Palace is like this. But where's the Star-Moon Master who came in earlier? Where are the two Tao sect cultivators?" After a while, there was no response from the silent starry sky. Only then did the Buddhist sect guardian smile. Looking at the place where Xiaohua and the others had disappeared, the voice of the primordial chaos ancestor sounded from the guardian's mouth again. "Hee, so they left long ago. Looks like that cultivator was not him. Even if it was him, so what? The Yin-Yang Illustrated Handbook reverses Yin and Yang. Without the strength of an immortal, how could he discover the secret of the Yin-Yang Illustrated Handbook? Even if he stood in front of me now, he would not be able to discover my background. Ha!" With that said, the Grand Mist ancestor also flew in the direction Su Zhifei had gone. However, beneath the Buddhist sect's protector's body, there were still Buddhist clouds beneath his feet. However, when he flew through the starry sky and arrived in front of a huge space, he realized that he had been too naive. The Star-Moon Palace was a place that even the two banished immortals feared, so how could it possibly have a simple rockfall matrix? In front of Xiaohua was an extremely large space. This space was almost boundless and stretched across the starry sky in front of the three of them. There were a lot of spatial fragments in the space, and these fragments were constantly flying around recklessly. Xiaohua looked at it. These fragments were either in the shape of a long strip, or in the shape of a square, or in the shape of an irregular hexagram. However, when Xiaohua looked deeper into the space, there were even more fragments that didn't have any fixed shape. One moment, they would condense into a circle, and the next moment, they would condense into a sheet. The strangest thing was that there were lines that didn't have any shape flowing freely in the space. However, no matter the size or shape of the fragments, there was a layer of starlight flickering around these fragments. The starlight blocked Xiaohua's vision, so he couldn't see what was under the starlight. Xiaohua released his divine thought naturally, but as soon as his divine thought entered the space, it was immediately torn apart by several unknown forces. It was instantly torn apart, and an indescribable stabbing pain came from his Naiwen Palace. The innate divine restriction outside his Naiwen Palace actually couldn't stop this space from attacking his divine thought. When they were slightly closer, boom, boom, boom. Layers upon layers of ghostly wails and wolf howls came from the space. This sound of the wind was quite soul-stealing, causing Xiaohua to feel a chill run down his spine. The strangest thing was that within the space, there was also the aura of a violent wind blowing against his face. Strands of ripples also rushed over along with the aura. Xiaohua could easily distinguish that a portion of the aura and ripples were similar to the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, while a portion was similar to the ruins and the primeval continent. Of course, there was still a portion that Xiaohua did not know about. This. Xiaohua was dumbfounded. He whispered to Fairy Xingyu, "Is this the meteor belt that Senior mentioned?" "Of course." Fairy Xingyu said proudly, "Can't you see that there is starlight on these fragments? Moreover, these fragments are flowing in this space like water." Shouldn't they be called a meteor belt? Alright. Xiao Hua said helplessly, I thought the so-called meteor belt was similar to the star array. What? Fairy Xingyu said with a smile. Do you think this name is inappropriate? It's not that it's inappropriate, Xiao Hua said with a bitter smile. I just think it's a little weird to call it a meteor belt. Then there's no other way. Fairy Xingyu said with a smile. I was the one who named the Star Moon Palace. Now, it's famous in the 3 continents. If you want to change it, I'm afraid it won't be easy. Senior, is there any danger in this meteor belt? Xiao Hua ignored Fairy Xingyu's show and looked at Su Ji. Su Ji looked at the chaotic space and pointed at the space fragments with his hand. He said, these space fragments are different. Some are earth fragments, some are ocean fragments, and some are pure void fragments. If they are void fragments, there will be voids in different realms. After the human clan enters, most of our bodies will be destroyed by the chi of heaven and earth. Even if they are earth fragments, ocean fragments, or mountain fragments, there will be some strange beasts on them. Some of these strange beasts are from the immortal world, some are from the demon league, and there are many that we don't know. If the human clan cultivators encounter them, they will most likely die. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at the fragments that had no rules. His heart was pounding. Su Ji then pointed at the space between the fragments and said, then there are these spaces. Divine sense can't enter these spaces. Even if our divine sense were to enter, it would be torn apart, let alone your divine sense. The reason why there is such a strange phenomenon is because these space fragments belong to different realms. The auras of different realms collide with each other in the space, forming an extremely strange cutting force. You must have sensed the aura within. Some are similar to the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, some are similar to the immortal realm and the demon league. Most of them are ancient, desolate auras. Those are the fragments left behind when the Star Moon Palace was refined in ancient times. There are shattered, desolate spaces on them. The chaotic intertwining of the auras of different realms will not only tear apart divine senses and extended thoughts, but also the bodies of the human clan. Therefore, we can't fly through this space for no reason. We can only find a gap in the chaotic aura and land in a safe space fragment. Then we can cross this meteor belt step by step. Fairy Xingyu said with a smile, of course, what if we are lucky enough to encounter a transmission channel in one of the spaces without having to pass through all the space fragments? I'm not that lucky. Xiao Hua immediately said with a bitter face, whenever I have to find a way out, I've always taken the furthest path. It's a thankless task. Hee hee. Fairy Xingyu covered her mouth and giggled. I thought you said you would be the luckiest. Xiao Hua shrugged and asked Su Ji in bewilderment, Senior, if I didn't have the Kunlun mirror, would the disciples of the star-picking tower and the cultivators chosen to sense the power of the stars and moon also have to pass through this meteor belt? Su Ji naturally understood Xiao Hua's doubts and explained, when Fairy Xingyu and I first discovered the Star Moon Palace, we were the ones who entered. In addition to this meteor belt, we also went to many other places. Therefore, we have a good understanding of the Star Moon Palace and the way to enter it. Therefore, most of the disciples chosen by Fairy Xingyu in the star-picking tower should be able to pass through the previous starlight passage smoothly. Entering the Star Moon Palace is a kind of reward for them. As for what opportunities they will encounter, that is their own business. Therefore, generally speaking, after entering the Star Moon Palace, Fairy Xingyu will let them go their own way and find their own path. The cultivators chosen to help us search for the power of the stars and moon will naturally have to follow us. When passing through this meteor belt, half of them will have no problem. The other half will not be able to pass through. Fairy Xingyu and I will use our magical powers to bring them over. That's impossible. Xiao Hua looked at the space fragments floating in the sky like a mighty river and said in surprise, I don't even dare to say that I have full confidence in passing through this meteor belt. Senior, half of the cultivators you mentioned will be able to pass through? This time we came at the wrong time. We might have come a little early or a little late. It's different from the previous times. Let's wait a little longer. It won't be long before the space vortex of this meteor belt stops. At that time, we will have a chance to pass through. Su Ji said faintly. He sat cross-legged in front of the starry sky. The lightning mark between his eyebrows flickered and appeared. A very mysterious fluctuation emerged from Su Ji's body and spread toward the vicinity of the meteor belt. When Fairy Xingyu saw this, she frowned and whispered, Su Ji, can your physical body withstand the expansion of thoughts? It doesn't matter. Su Ji said softly, I won't be using this physical body soon. There's no harm in trying. It's better to be careful. Fairy Xingyu said with concern, it's not the final moment yet. If something unexpected happens? Yes, I know. Su Ji nodded. I know what I'm doing. That. Xiaohua thought for a moment and whispered, Senior, if you don't have to worry, leave this task to me. Don't use the methods of the immortal world. Chapter 4509. You. Su Ji was a little skeptical and asked, what other magical powers do you have? This is the Star Moon Palace. Let me try first. Xiaohua said with a smile. If I can do it, you don't have to waste. Extend thought. The corners of Su Ji's mouth curled into a faint smile as he said in a gratified manner, all right, you can try first. As he spoke, Su Ji withdrew his extend thought and looked at Xiaohua kindly. Even Fairy Xingyu had a grateful smile in her eyes. Xiaohua nodded slightly at the two immortals. He raised his hand and patted his forehead, opening his delusion breaker eye again. Seeing a green shadow flashing between Xiaohua's eyebrows, Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu looked at each other with a strange look in their eyes. Xiaohua opened his eyes, and everything in front of him changed again. What starry sky, what meteor belt, they all disappeared. In front of him was an incomparably huge space, and the space was filled with countless fragments of different splendors. These fragments seemed like dust, and also like crushed stones, floating in the countless fine lines that seemed like flowing water. The fragments were similar to the space fragments that Xiaohua had seen with his naked eye, but they were much smaller. As for whether each fragment was a continent or an ocean, Xiaohua's delusion breaker eye could not tell. As for the fine lines, they flowed at an extremely fast speed and were entangled with each other. Some fine lines even rushed into the fragments and shattered them. Not only were the brilliance of these fine lines different, but their thickness was also different. Some were as thin as hair, and some were as thick as threads. However, hundreds of millions of fine lines enveloped the entire space. In front of Xiaohua's eyes, there was a thin mist-like golden light that protected Xiaohua and the others. There were some strange runes in the golden light. These runes were like fine lines of light, and within the fine lines of light, smaller runes were engraved. This golden light covered the sky and the earth, separating it from the fine lines like flowing water in an orderly manner. Even in the distance of the meteor belt, it looked like the runes were also paved with golden light. Xiaohua looked around. The fine lines of the flowing water seemed to have no source and no end. On his left and right, two dim silvery white human-shaped lights flashed slightly. Xiaohua naturally knew that this silver-white humanoid brilliance was Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu. Therefore, he only glanced at them from the corner of his eye. He did not dare to look at them for too long. Then he focused his delirium dharma eye on the fine lines of the water flow. After looking at it carefully for a moment, Xiaohua had an idea in his heart. Just as Su Ji said, the fine lines were slowly slowing down. Moreover, the collisions between the different colored fine lines were starting to lessen. Xiaohua could even see a slightly chaotic order in the fine lines before his eyes. Seeing the delusion breaker dharma eye on Xiaohua's forehead disappear, Su Ji asked with some concern, how is it? Your divine art didn't suffer any backlash from the meteor belt, right? Xiaohua's heart warmed slightly. This kind of adventure was a true adventure. There was no need to worry about being tricked by others. If there was some danger, others would even block it for you. Xiaohua smiled and said, Senior, you should know that this divine ability of mine usually won't backfire. Well, what did you see? Unlike Su Ji, Fairy Xingyu urged, can you see the passage they flew through? Xiaohua shook his head and said, there is no passage in this meteor belt. We can only rush through it slowly like what you said just now. Oh. Fairy Xingyu responded with some disappointment. However, I saw that these different auras are slowing down. Moreover, there is a certain order between the auras. Xiaohua said again. A strange look flashed across Suji's eyes as he whispered, Your divine art. Is it the Buddha's heavenly eye? Well, it's somewhat similar. Xiaohua didn't hide it and replied, however, there is also a big difference. My Dharma eye is much more powerful than heavenly eye. You're just bluffing. Fairy Xingyu didn't believe him. Also, Xiaohua pointed to the two sides and asked, Is there no other place that is easy to pass through? Actually, there are other pavilions in this meteor belt that we can go to. Su Ji explained, however, those pavilions require some strange tokens. Fairy Xingyu and I didn't find any, so we can't enter those pavilions. On the other side of this meteor belt, there are some places that don't require tokens. In particular, there is one place that might be the passage, so we have to go through there. When Su Ji and I first came here, we spent most of our time in this meteor belt, so we know the situation on the other side of this meteor belt the best. Fairy Xingyue added, This meteor belt is almost endless. Even with our ability, we can't find the end of it. In the nearby hundreds of thousands of miles, only this place has a relatively weak aura. There are also times when it has a lull. The other places are like rivers, and the auras of the various realms are like waves, never calming down. We can't pass through it all. Senior, you must have tried other methods. Xiaohua probed. Were they all ineffective? Su Ji nodded. After finding a pavilion with a strong immortal spiritual aura, we were a little impatient when we entered. When we passed through this meteor belt, we tried to use the flowing cloud bridge of the immortal realm. Not only did it not bring us to the other side of the meteor belt, but it also almost destroyed my physical body at that time. Senior, can you protect me? Xiaohua pondered for a moment and asked. What do you want to do? Su Ji frowned. Since we're here, don't fail at the last step. Why don't you wait for a while? Junior will try. Xiaohua smiled. If it works, not only will Senior have more confidence, but Junior will also have more means to protect my life in this Star Moon Palace. It's better not to try. Su Ji's concern was like facing his own junior. He said, Fairy Xingyu and I didn't tell you the details of the Star Moon Palace because we were afraid that you would have your own ideas and inevitably use your own methods. You just need to follow behind us and contribute when it's time. Junior will try. Xiaohua still refused to give up. If there's anything unusual about this meteor belt, Senior only needs to block the backlash of the meteor belt. Presumably, Senior already has some experience, right? Su Ji was a little unhappy. He glanced at Xiaohua and said, Have you really decided? Junior wants to try. Xiaohua nodded affirmatively. Well, you can cast the spell. Su Ji agreed. If there's anything unusual, I'll block the backlash for you. However, the backlash of this meteor belt is very strange. I'm not sure if I can block it. You have to be careful too. Xiaohua responded. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the soul silk between his eyebrows rushed out. In an instant, a ghostly chanting sound came from the soul silk. One by one, green seal characters flew out from between his eyebrows and quickly separated and combined in midair. Shaman. Fairy Xingyue opened her mouth, her eyes filled with horror. Su Ji's expression also changed drastically. Before Su Ji could stop Xiaohua, he saw the green seal text land in the sky of the meteor belt. A tumbling teleportation channel slowly appeared, and within the teleportation channel, the green seal text swarmed towards the opposite side of the meteor belt. However, just as this technique passed through the golden light that Xiaohua's delusion breaker eye could see, the runes in the golden light immediately transformed into a long spear that was several feet long. It let out a sharp whistle and crazily rushed into the green seal text. Pa! With a loud sound, the green seal text of the word transmit completely collapsed. The transmission channel that had just been formed also collapsed from the inside out. When the transmission channel turned into hundreds of small green seal characters, More golden runes once again turned into thumb-sized spears and pierced into the smaller green seal characters. Pa pa pa. More rumbling sounds were heard until all the green seal characters were destroyed. Not only that, when the green seal characters disappeared, the golden light condensed into a spear several feet long and pierced toward Xiao Hua's eyebrows like lightning and thunder. Get out of the way! Although Su Ji couldn't see the spear condense from the golden light, he could feel the recoil of the meteor belt. Chapter 45:10. After that, Su Ji looked at Xiao Hua again and said earnestly, Xiao Hua, have you forgotten? Xing Yue and I have already warned you. Some magical powers should not be revealed in front of others. Did you take it as a passing wind? Although we don't understand the magical power you just used, how can we not know what it is? Taboo power is the most taboo power in the immortal world. As long as there is a taboo power, the celestial venerables will hunt it down and eliminate it. I know you trust us, but we don't dare to trust ourselves. Who knows what kind of interrogation we will encounter when we return to the immortal world? Even if it's a soul search, it's normal. We can't guarantee that we won't reveal your secret. If this matter brings disaster to you, then you can only blame yourself. Su Ji's words were very strict, but they were sincere and sincere. Xiao Hua seemed to see another helpless person standing in front of him and berating him. He straightened his face, bowed, and said, Yes, I understand. Thank you for your reminder, Senior. In this world, there is no one you can absolutely trust. The coldness on Su Ji's face lessened slightly, and he said, It's just that the price of betrayal is different. If the price is high enough, some people may even abandon the realm that gave birth to them. Yes, I've learned my lesson. Xiao Hua, of course, knew the care in Su Ji's words. He didn't dare to straighten his back and answered respectfully. It's good that you know. You're just two. Su Ji hesitated and stopped. He looked at the chaotic realm, and the aura gradually calmed down. He said, Forget it, let's not talk about this. The meteor belt seems to have changed. Let's wait a little longer. But Xiao Hua agreed. In fact, he opened his illusion breaker eyes again and carefully observed the meteor belt. Fairy Xingyue watched Su Ji berate Xiao Hua from the side. Her eyes showed a trace of confusion and a trace of complexity. At this time, the Xingyue palace had begun to bustle. Other than the 4 aristocratic families and some of the Confucian cultivators rushing to the meteor belt, the other Confucian cultivators and great demons of the demon clan also went to other places in the Xingyue palace. There were no traces of people outside the Xingyue palace. When the Xingyue palace moved again, even the starlight passage between the gate and the 1,000 demons' sacred realm could not hold on. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The entire starlight passage completely collapsed, and the passage was completely filled with chaotic storms. In just a moment, the starlight disappeared, and a powerful whirlwind in the interspace. The whirlwind blew out of the interlayer, scattering the power of the stars and the moon in the sky. Without the starlight passage, the Xingyue palace began to move faster. In the time it took to eat a meal, the huge aura within hundreds of thousands of miles was concealed in the void again. I think this 6-star spatial fragment is safer. Xiao Hua only said that he was guessing and did not say what he had seen. Su Ji's cold face relaxed slightly. He nodded and said, According to our previous experience, the normal shapes, such as rectangular and square, are similar to the fragments of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. The strange line-like fragments are the fragments of the ancient desolation. The hexagonal, heptagonal, or other more complicated shapes should be similar to the fragments of the immortal world, the demon league, and even the dragon realm. And according to our experience, the fragments with complicated shapes are usually at the back. We won't choose such a fragment for the first time. Fairy Xingyue added. Hearing Fairy Xingyue mention experience, Su Ji looked up at her and smiled bitterly. It was just a little late. Their previous experience was already unreliable. What was the use of mentioning experience now? Maybe there's a transmission channel in this fragment? Xiao Hua said optimistically. Senior, how should we go in? Are we just going to fly in like that? Of course not. That's courting death. Fairy Xingyue shook her head and took out a magic weapon that looked like an astrolabe from her soft armor. She looked around and took a few steps sideways. Then she looked around again and took 2 more steps forward. Xiaohua noticed that there was a flame flashing in Fairy Xingyue's right eye. Although the flame had a strong aura of starlight, Xiaohua could see clearly that there were also very few green threads of light in it. Forbidden power. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes. He knew that Su Ji was not exaggerating. In order to destroy the Tao, the immortals, Buddhas, and demons could join forces to wipe out the Tao sect cultivators from the 3 continents. Immortal Emperor Gaochen could also raise the Tao sect cultivators like dogs in the Peng Lai immortal realm. Since the immortals of the immortal world regarded soul cultivation as a taboo, they would definitely have more powerful and violent means to deal with matters related to soul cultivation. Then, why did the immortal world regard soul cultivation as a taboo power? Judging from the few traces of green seal script in Fairy Xingyue's cultivation method, which was similar to the immortal world's cultivation method, Xiaohua knew that soul cultivation could connect heaven and earth and make ghosts and gods weep. Thinking of this, Xiaohua could not help but send a voice transmission. Senior, I still have a question that I want to ask you. Hearing Xiaohua's voice transmission, Su Ji frowned and said, since you shouldn't ask, then don't ask. Even if you ask, I won't answer. Alas, I know I shouldn't ask. But the problem is, apart from you, I really can't find anyone in the 3 continents to ask. Xiaohua said helplessly. And, you're the only person in the world that I can trust. I've already told you that no one in the world can be trusted, including me. Su Ji replied mercilessly. However, Su Ji thought for a moment and said, if you think you have to ask, you can ask, but I can decide not to answer. But Xiaohua nodded hurriedly. Looking at Fairy Xingyue, who was wandering in the starry sky, he asked, I've seen the Devil World's Devil Emperor sacrifice millions of blood spirits. He wanted to borrow the souls of those blood spirits. I don't understand. What's the use of these souls? Of course, in our Taoist Dharma spells, refining our natal Dharma treasures and cultivating the nascent soul out of the body also require the power of souls. I know this, but I don't understand. With so many souls, what kind of divine ability can you cultivate? You should ask the devil race this question. Su Ji did not want to answer Xiaohua's question. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He himself had a demon lord's little brother, and this little brother was a pure demon clan's devil spirit. He also had the devil blade murder, but Xiaohua was clear in his heart that the demon clan devoured souls and raised them based on their instincts. They really didn't know the true use of souls, or perhaps only a higher realm than the demon realm would know. Seeing Xiaohua's bitter smile, Su Ji seemed to be unable to bear it. He thought for a moment and said, the human race often says that human nature is the most complicated thing in the world. Then this soul is the most mysterious thing in the world. Even immortals don't dare to touch the power of souls. Let's put it this way. The foundation of the Buddhist sect's 9 transformations golden body is reincarnation, and the foundation of reincarnation is the soul. The foundation of the Buddhist sect's golden body and Buddha fruit is faith. Faith is a manifestation of the power of souls. Just this manifestation has created the Buddhist sect, a Buddhist sect that can compete with the Taoist sect. How big of an impact do you think the power of souls will have? Oh, Xiaohua, what do you think is the most primitive power of souls? Chapter 45:11. Of course, Xiaohua knew that the answer Su Ji was talking about was probably the soul. However, he thought about it and answered in the opposite way. From what I know, it should be pure physical strength. Yes, you're right. Su Ji nodded. Whether it's the human race, the demon race, the spirit race, the devil race, or the divine race and the holy light race that you don't know about, they all admit that the most primitive power in this world is the physical strength. Of course, the physical bodies of the other races may be different from the physical bodies of the human race. However, as far as I know, An immortal king who once came into contact with the forbidden power said that the most primitive power in this world is probably the soul power. Because the soul was formed long before the physical body can decay and decay, but the soul exists forever. Junior understands? Xiaohua nodded. You don't understand. Su Ji interrupted Xiaohua unceremoniously and continued to explain, I don't know if you know about the underworld. The underworld has the power of the dead, which is also a part of the soul power. The power of the dead is the nemesis of all magic power, immortal power, and Buddhist power. The underworld is not a simple world. It is the place where all life is annihilated and where all life sprouts. Even someone as strong as the heavenly lord of punishment of the punishment palace doesn't dare to provoke the underworld because the underworld has a part of the soul power. Xiaohua, Taoists can become immortals by cultivating spells, Confucian cultivators can ascend to heaven by cultivating Confucian techniques, Buddhists can cultivate the 9 transformations golden body, demons can break through the starry sky by tempering their demonic bodies, then, those who can control the soul power can cultivate gods. Gods? Xiaohua pretended to be surprised. Gods, what are they? Can they also be cultivated? Su Ji didn't answer. He saw that Fairy Xingyu had stopped and turned to look at him. He nodded at Fairy Xingyu and stared at Xiaohua. Xiaohua, this is my last sentence. In the future, don't ask any other immortals such questions. Gods may be the end of the immortals' cultivation, or the end of the demon league, the immortal world, and the heavenly court. However, no immortal knows whether or not he will be a god at the end of his cultivation. Because there is a saying in the immortal world, gods can never be cultivated. Only the ancient times had gods. In the current era, there are no more miracles and no more gods. So, Xiaohua, there's no need to talk about taboo energy in the future. After saying that, Su Ji moved and landed beside Fairy Xingyue. He asked, Xingyue, are you ready? Yes, I can activate it now. Fairy Xingyue nodded and said, however, I need a breath of immortal qi. I just changed my body, so I can't activate the immortal mark. Then let me do it. Su Ji raised his hand to take the astrolabe, but Fairy Xingyu said worriedly, you just used a similar immortal technique. Can your body withstand it? Didn't I just say it? I don't need this body anymore. It won't be a problem. Su Ji indifferently said and took the star plate. Then he shouted to Xiaohua, who was in a daze, Xiaohua, quickly come over, we are about to enter. After saying that, Su Ji raised his eyebrows again. He looked at the distant starry sky and saw a fat figure. He snorted coldly and said, you're fast. It's only been a moment. I'm afraid you've already killed a few more people. Of course he doesn't care about other people's lives. Fairy Xingyue also said coldly, he only cares about his own life. Xiaohua was a little shocked by Su Ji's words. At this time, he had just come to his senses. He turned his head and looked at the body of the Buddha occupied by the Grand Mist Ancestor. He suddenly understood and sighed, I'd rather betray the world than let the world betray me. Let's go, I don't want to see this filthy thing. Su Ji raised his hand and threw the astrolabe into the air. He spat a mouthful of immortal qi on the astrolabe. The astrolabe did not change, but Su Ji's face began to look old. His sideburns were stained with white frost, and his face was full of wrinkles. Seeing this, Xiaohua was suddenly shocked and felt a chill run down his back. The warning of the Hudastacade's elder Wu rang in his ears again. Su Ji's words just now also rang in his ears. He thought with a trembling heart, I don't know if my body is worth the deep trust in Su Ji's heart? Su Ji's celestial spiritual qi landed on the astrolabe, and a silvery white brilliance appeared on the astrolabe. Layers of mysterious markings rushed out from the brilliance, and these markings were formed by densely packed runes. As the markings flew out, Su Ji rubbed his hands together, and thick crystal lights fell into the astrolabe. The markings then turned into hundreds of flying birds, and these birds had starlight engraved on their foreheads. Their eyes were like crescent moons, and when their wings flapped, the sound of wind and thunder could be heard. Go! Su Ji waved his sleeve. The hundreds of birds flew into the meteor belt with a quack quack sound. Let's go. We'll use the simplest flying technique. Su Ji returned the astrolabe to Fairy Xingyu and put his hands behind his back. A faint cloud appeared under his feet, and he rushed into the meteor belt with the birds. Fairy Xingyu took the astrolabe, raised her slender hand, and pointed at different places on the astrolabe. The astrolabe emitted several layers of obscure fluctuations, directing the birds to fly in an extremely zigzagging direction. However, after flying for hundreds of feet, the bird in front exploded with a boom. The birds behind it immediately flapped their tails and flew in another direction beautifully. The fierce interrealm storm around them was like the night wind, causing the feathers of the birds to tremble slightly. Xiaohua and the others naturally followed the birds and flew in another direction. The six-star space fragment looked very close, but it was extremely far away. After flying for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, one of the hundreds of birds would be destroyed in a short while. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, there were less than 20 birds left. Looking at the six-star-shaped space fragment again, it seemed to still be flickering with faint starlight in the distance. Su Ji said in a low voice, "Every realm has an edge. There's never an endless thing. The reason why it feels endless is because you're in the realm. As long as you're in the realm, if you don't have a magical power that transcends the realm, even if you reach the edge of the realm, you still won't be able to see the realm. So, you'll feel that the realm is endless. These space fragments come from different realms. The aura of each realm is different, and the aura of the fragments won't merge. Therefore, you can see each space fragment as an independent realm. You're in the meteor belt, so you can also see a larger space fragment. If you can't find a way to enter the space fragment, it will always keep a distance from you." Su Ji. Fairy Xingyu said with some dissatisfaction, "Didn't you say that you can't reveal too much about the immortal divinity? You can't reveal too much about the immortal realm to Xiaohua. How can you casually tell Xiaohua about the immortal realm? This is just to broaden his horizons. It's not considered teaching him the mysteries of the immortal realm." Su Ji said disapprovingly, "Besides, he's already seen the seven-colored shell. Do you think he didn't get anything from it?" "Hee." Xiaohua smiled and asked, "Fairy, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask it." "Don't ask." Fairy Xingyu hurriedly waved her hand and said, "Your question must involve the immortal realm again." "Okay then." Xiaohua shrugged and immediately stopped asking. However, a smile had already appeared at the corner of his mouth. Sure enough, after a while, Fairy Xingyu urged again, "What are you asking? Why aren't you talking?" "Hee." Xiaohua blinked and asked, "Senior, you came from the Palace of Justice. You must know the various realms very well?" "I don't know." Fairy Xingyu shook her head like a rattledrum. "I'm just occasionally ordered by the Palace of Justice to check some things. I've met the demon clan of the 10,000 demon realm who broke through the realms in the Dawn Rain continent. I've also met the seven-colored sea god shell from the Red Sea domain in the Thousand Demons sacred realm. Well, the two seniors are also from the immortal realm. I'm very curious. Why is it so easy to break through the realms?" Xiaohua ignored Fairy Xingyu's shaking of her head and asked seriously, "Didn't Senior Su just say that it's difficult to break through the realms in the realms? It's naturally difficult to break through the ordinary realms, but the three continents are a bit special." Fairy Xingyu was a female immortal after all, so she couldn't help showing off a little. However, she only said half a sentence and stopped. She raised her hand and pointed at the six-star space fragment that still looked very far away. "Look again. Is it close to that space fragment?" But Xiaohua knew that Fairy Xingyu wouldn't say anything else, so he had no choice but to prepare to activate his Delusion Breaker Dharma Eye. However, before he activated it, he suddenly thought of something and said with a smile, "Fairy, I don't know any special spells. Of course, I can't see any clues. Everything still depends on your magic power." Fairy Xingyu glanced at Xiaohua and rolled her eyes at him. Then she spat out a mouthful of quintessential essence at the astrolabe in her hand. Swoosh! A pillar of stars rushed out of the astrolabe and caught up with the few remaining birds in front of them. Caw! The birds cried out sadly and turned into fireflies. Then, the entire pillar of stars swept toward the space fragment like a whirlwind. Poof, poof, poof. The sound of explosions came from the pillar of stars. The aura of the realms had hit the pillar of stars and made it full of holes. However, the shattered pillar of stars also revealed a safe path at this time and fell into the brilliance of the space fragment. Su Ji was still in front. His figure followed the pillar of stars and fell into the brilliance. Xiaohua could clearly see that Su Ji's figure was getting smaller and smaller. Xiaohua watched Su Ji's figure shrink. Outside the meteor belt in the distance, the fat figure of the Grand Mist Ancestor appeared again. The Grand Mist Ancestor squinted and watched Xiaohua and the other two shrink and fall into the hexagonal space fragment with a solemn expression on his face. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.